Thank you for joining us. If you're looking for information in the town of Wolcott, you can obviously come to WLCT 96, and we hope you do that often. There are other ways we can do that. Go to our mailbox and pick up the Waterbury Republican American. They'll give you snippets of what's happening in Wolcott, and they give you a little bit of what's going on in Hartford, and they give you a little bit of what's going on in the rest of the state. But you elect people to go to the big city up to the north, and you elect them to go up and represent you, bring your ideas there, sit down with others and decide what is good, what is bad. Put the labels aside. Let's just work for our towns. That's the way we wish it would work. In Wolcott, you've elected a gentleman many times. Rob Sampson is your representative to the House of Representatives up in Wolcott. Rob, thank you for joining me. We're here to discuss a topic that I know I am discussing with everybody in town. It's a matter that I know if you turn on the Waterbury radio station or you turn on the Hartford radio station, those stations, it's wall-to-wall budget. It's wall-to-wall what is going on, how come it's taking so long. Okay. Right now, we're in the beginning of September. Things are changing, if not on a day-to-day basis, they're changing on a weekly basis. There recently was and perhaps has changed even by now, there has been a proposal put on the floor by the Democrats. I know that the Republicans have put forth a couple, and I know you're probably working on something else. So tell us what the attitude is in Hartford, and fill us in on some of the concerns that they have up there.
Well, first things first, Mike, I just want to thank you for this opportunity to be able to answer the questions about the state budget, and also to have the opportunity to communicate with as many constituents as possible. I certainly get a lot of emails on various topics, and I've gotten a bunch of emails certainly about the budget, the recent labor deal, those kind of things. But an opportunity to actually talk to you one-on-one about issues affecting the district is certainly very, very important to me. It's a way I can get my perspective across, much more so than just writing my monthly column. It's always something I want to make sure of, is that people know exactly why the decisions that I make are being made, and so I appreciate that opportunity. So to start right off about the state budget, I'll just correct you on a couple of things. First thing is that the Democrats have not yet offered a budget on the floor of the House or Senate. Up until just a couple of days ago, they had not offered any budget document whatsoever. The legislative session runs in the first year of your two-year term from January till June. This year, the session ended on June 7th. And our job as a state legislature was to adopt a budget sometime in that period and prior to June 7th, with another deadline being June 30th, which is essentially the end of the fiscal year when the new budget's supposed to take effect on July 1st. Because the Democrats never offered a budget, they also never offered the Republicans in the House or Senate an opportunity to present an alternative budget. The Speaker of the House is the only person that has the power to determine what bills are brought forward on the floor of the House of Representatives for debate and ultimately a vote. And we and my colleagues in the House Republican caucus prepared a budget based on what I think are sound principles that would put our state moving back in a better direction. And we have wanted nothing but the opportunity to bring that out publicly on the floor of the House of Representatives so that we can have a legitimate discussion about what is affecting the citizens in Wolcott and around Connecticut, and what is the best way to make Connecticut a more competitive place for businesses and a better place for people to live, have children, grow a family, and retire. And we haven't even had that opportunity yet. It's August 25th today, I think, and here it is. It's more than 2 months after the legislative session has ended, and it's almost 2 months since the beginning of the fiscal year, and the leadership in the House and Senate Democrats has yet to offer a budget. I don't want to come across as completely partisan, as if I'm name-calling all Democrats, but the leadership of both the House and Senate Democrats deserves to be called out for their inability to put a budget document forward.
Okay, let's just keep a dialogue going here. I know that you're going to have to cross the party line once in a while.
Sure.
But right now, we want to talk about attitudes, and I realize that's what you're doing. Let's talk about the positives also.
Sure. Well, I don't know what positive we can talk about. Certainly there are ongoing discussions and negotiations every day. The governor is meeting with House and Senate Democrats. There have been ongoing negotiations between the leaders of House and Senate Republicans with the House and Senate Democrats. And the members of the House Republican caucus, which I'm a part of, we've been meeting very, very often to stay in touch and to make sure that we are first in tune with our constituents and offering a budget that is going to be beneficial to the state, and doing our best to promote the idea that it's heard on the floor.
In most towns and cities, something can be called in the way of a meeting, A, by the call of the chair, and also by X number of members. Isn't that the case in Hartford?
Not to my knowledge, no. Only the Speaker of the House can put the House of Representatives into session.
Okay. We have proposals that the governor made back in March, April?
February, actually. Yep,
February?
the governor offered his first budget proposal in the end of February.
And it was never brought to the floor?
No, it was not.
Then I've heard that the Republicans have at least one, if not two, proposals that they put forward prior to this week.
Oh, yes. Yeah, we made our first alternative to the governor's budget proposal back on April 27th, long before the end of session, and used the entire period from April 27th to the end of the session to pressure House and Senate Democrats to bring our budget to the floor because they did not have one of their own.
And the Speaker never put that on the agenda.
That is correct.
Okay. So here we are, almost 9 months to the day, and the state of Connecticut still has no budget. We've heard that the governor has the opportunity, and I don't know what the exact term is, but the governor is able to use his power to run some kind of strange budget.
That is correct. Since there is no budget currently in force in the state of Connecticut, and the prior budget ended with the last fiscal year on June 30th, the governor has taken over managing the state's finances as of July 1st. And as you know, he has made a lot of changes already. He instituted furlough days for various state employees and nonprofit organizations around the state that are funded by state taxpayer money in an effort to reduce the ongoing cost of government. And he is threatening to make major, disastrous reductions in municipal and education aid to the smaller, more rural communities of Connecticut, including Wolcott. He proposes to reduce our education aid from $13 million, which is what it has been for the last several years, to around $5.5 million, a reduction of over $7 million, which would translate very simply into a massive tax hike, property tax hike for the town of Wolcott, because the town government then would be forced to make up that loss in revenue. I think our entire education budget is around $35 million. So if we're getting $13 million from the state and you lose $7 million of that, that's going to translate into a couple of mills in your tax bill for sure.
That's 60% of our town budget is for education.
Right. He's also, the governor also wants to entirely eliminate the town government side of the funding also. I think our town government budget is about $20 million in Wolcott, and we don't receive a lot from the state. It's around $400,000, but he wants to entirely eliminate that. Also, something that will be transferred on to the property taxpayers. Since we're talking about ECS, Mike, if you don't mind, I want to just point out, since we didn't talk about the substance of any of these budgets, the governor's original proposal, his proposed budget, almost everyone in the legislature, House and Senate, Republicans and Democrats, considered that budget to be dead on arrival, simply because it had very similar and very harsh cuts to municipal and town aid, and no tax increases, actually, which is something that spoke to me, but not to the Democrats who are in the majority in both the House and Senate. So our response to that as Republicans was that we need to move the state forward in a way that makes the state more attractive. But we need to stick to two core principles, which we have maintained throughout this whole process, which is that we need to not further burden the citizens of our state with more taxes. So any budget that I would support, and the majority of my Republican colleagues in the House and Senate, it has to be a budget that has no new or increased taxes whatsoever. Not even increasing the fee to become an insurance agent or something like that. No fees, no taxes can be increased. And the other thing is that we must fully fund town and education aid, because those in essence become tax increases themselves. If you shortchange the towns, then you're forcing the towns to raise taxes, and that may as well be a tax hike. So those are the two key things that we are focused on, and that's what is going to be required for me to vote for anybody's budget, whether it's Republican or Democrat.
Somewhere down the line, at one point, there was a discussion about not funding the pensions
Right.
as they had been doing previously. Has that pretty well gone away, or is that still something somebody's got in the cellar?
My understanding is that the only advocate for that plan is the governor. It was included in his original budget proposal back in February. We did not include that in our budget proposal because that, much like a reduction in town aid, would be an additional cost that becomes a burden to the citizens of the towns that have to pay for it. I'm not entirely opposed to the concept. I mean, I'm a local control advocate, and I would much prefer to see the towns that I represent hang on to their money rather than sending a lot of it to Hartford, so that my colleagues up there get to decide how to redistribute it and which towns get it back. Towns like Wolcott, we get a fraction of the amount of tax dollars that go to Hartford back in the form of aid, whereas the major cities get 10 times the amount that they send. So I think it's a smart plan for small towns to keep things within their communities, but it's also something that you shouldn't do in one fell swoop with no warning that suddenly we're going to take this out of your hands, but yet you have to pay the bill.
We have a problem that has now been festering for at least 20 years, maybe
Sure.
longer. And everybody that's come along has kicked that problem down the line. We'll take care of it ahead. We'll take care of it ahead. I'm going to do what I asked you not to do. Looks like right now, with the labor contract that was just recently signed, they kicked it down to 2027.
Right.
Is anybody in Hartford talking realistically about a long-range plan to put the state of Connecticut back on the track?
I would say yes. I was first elected in 2010, started my service in 2011, And much like today, the House and Senate Republicans put forward an alternative to the governor's budget. And if you recall, the governor passed the largest tax increase in state history, along with the majority Democrats in the legislature in 2011. And then he followed it up in 2013 and did the same thing. And each time we've offered some alternative with those principles of no taxes, fully fund the towns, and structural changes. Changes to the way our government operates so that it can last into the future. In the last budget cycle, which was in 2014, we put forward a 5-year budget plan for that express purpose, to show the savings that would accumulate over time if we made structural changes to the way government operates. Unfortunately, this budget cycle has been so chaotic because the things change day to day. First and foremost, we thought we would be offering a budget during the last fiscal year so we could plan for this fiscal year in advance. And then when that did not happen, and I just want to point out, on June 30th, which is the last day of the fiscal year, my House Republican colleagues and I, we went to the Capitol en masse as a group and stood outside the House chamber and held a press conference demanding that the Speaker of the House come and call us into session to gavel us in to debate any budget, whether it's the governor's budget, our budget, or if they had a product of their own. As time goes on, we have to keep adapting to changing circumstances. So while our budgets still include structural changes, and we do want to develop a plan for the long term, that's difficult to do when you're being asked to constantly modify what you just did 2 weeks ago because of some new change, much like you mentioned the labor deal, which essentially precluded us from making many of the changes we wanted to do, including certain types of privatization and guaranteeing no layoff provisions. There's built-in raises for state employees. They have a wage freeze for the first 2 years, but the Democrat agreement that passed builds in new bonuses for them and numerous other changes. There are bonuses for new hires. There are increased amount of benefits for union stewards to take time off to go to various conventions and that kind of thing, to provide them union workers doing union business on the state taxpayer dime in offices in Hartford. The thing is, I don't want to get down on that state employees in their entirety, but that agreement is exactly everything that's wrong with the way our government runs, because essentially it was the majority Democrats taking something that they consider to be their constituent base and making sure that they preserve their support going forward, rather than what's doing best for the entire population, 3.5 million citizens of Connecticut.
Okay. We're here in the town of Wolcott, and we're looking every day up to the Capitol building, and we're looking for some sanity to come through. Mm-hmm. Whether it's your group or the other group, the sanity needs to happen. I would assume you have the leadership in place that's going to make it happen on your side. What is the pressure that people of the town of Wolcott could make on the other side? We don't have anybody from that side that speaks for us up there, except you and Senator Markley.
Right. Well, I mean, this as you mentioned from a few minutes ago, this is not a new thing. We have been traveling down a path of increased scope and size and cost of government for a long time. And I believe that the political parties have diverged much more so than they ever have in the past. I believe that the citizens of Connecticut are slowly but surely waking up to what each of the parties stands for. When I first got elected, the House of Representatives was 99 Democrats to 52 Republicans, a 2-to-1 margin. And there have been significant pickups in all of the cycles since then. So today it is 79 Democrats to 72 Republicans. Pretty close margin there. And in the Senate, when I was first elected, it was 24 Democrats to 12 Republicans. And today it's 18 to 18, although they do have the lieutenant governor who essentially is the 19th Democrat vote in the chamber. So I think change is happening. I think people are waking up around the state, and they are realizing that the leadership in Hartford, and I don't want to single out any specific Democrat legislators, because there are very fine people that serve in the Democrat caucus, and some of them have had great courage. There's a gentleman, Representative John Hampton. He was the only Democrat in the House to cross party lines on the union deal, and he recognized that it was bad for the state, and he had the courage to cross over. That's what we need. Is we need more of them to be receptive to the actual will of the citizens of the state, and we need our citizens to pay much more attention to what's actually happening. The beauty of our system of government, Mike, is that we have lived in a very prosperous country. And what happens when that happens is that citizens have to take less of a role in the daily operations of their government. And unfortunately, that allows that government to kind of get out of hand and do things because there's nobody keeping a close eye on them. And I think that's where but I also believe that people in Connecticut are now fully aware of the problems that we have and are paying much more attention than they have in many, many years. And you're going to see a result. I think there is a distinct possibility you're going to see Republicans elect a governor next year and take one or both chambers as a majority next time. And I'm hopeful that if that happens, that people in my party are going to do the right thing and lead. I believe we've done our best to show the citizens of Connecticut that we want to do that leadership role. You know how hard it is when you serve in the minority and you know pretty much full well, unless some really crazy thing happens, that your budget product that you have spent countless hours developing and putting the effort into is probably never going to get a vote on the floor, and even if it does, it's not going to pass and become law. And when you put out such a budget product, you're also taking all the criticism that goes with it. Well, why did you do this? Why did you cut that? Why did you make this decision? That, to me, is leadership. When you have a minority caucus who doesn't just throw up their hands and say, well, the Democrats have control, they're going to do whatever they're going to do. We say, no. We have a better plan. This is what it is. We try and make the case for it each and every day. That's why I'm here talking to you today, because I want people to know that there is a better way, and if they give us the chance, we can lead this state, and we can lead the state back to being prosperous and a home that people can feel confident in staying in.
All right, let's bring it back to Wolcott.
Sure.
Yes, the governor's plan was something that was thrown out there, and a lot was made of it. Even more recently, there was a thing that hit CT Mirror that showed exactly what you were talking about. They were going to take from the small towns, and they were going to give it to the big cities. And apparently now there is a Democratic plan that looks like it's going to take $550,000 away from our ECS funding if this plan is presented and brought to the floor and approved. But not only that, the town is also going to suffer a loss in revenue based on the funding that we get from the state. It's going to end up pretty close to $1 million that we're going to take a hit for with that plan. Let's look at the scenarios now, because this is what the people are concerned about. Obviously, parents are concerned about it. The teachers are concerned about it. They like their jobs. We're seeing Southington is going to take a big hit. One way or another, they're going to take a big hit down there. We're going to take the hit up here too. Perhaps it's not as bad as it was going to be, and maybe that was the plan right along. Maybe we hit them hard, and then we come back and we tap them and then knees a little bit. Okay. Let's look at some scenarios. The Speaker now presents it, the Democratic plan, to you people. You reject it for one reason or another. Obviously, somebody's got to present another plan. If it's approved, where does it go from there? Does it then go to the Senate for approval?
Sure. I believe that a budget vote can begin in either the House or the Senate.
And go either way?
That is correct,
Okay.
yes. It certainly has to pass both chambers before the governor has an opportunity to either agree to it, do nothing, or to veto the budget, which would require it going back to the legislature for a 2/3 majority to repass it. The likelihood of that is pretty slim. The governor has been pretty open about stating that he does not support the Republican proposal because we want to fully fund the towns and not reduce education or town aid. And he has been pretty open about saying that he would oppose even the Democrat budget because even though it does do those things, it raises the sales tax to 6.85%. I think it's premature to say that the Democrats have a budget. They came out and did a press release, the Speaker of the House did, and announced this budget, and they've offered documents. My question is, if they have a budget, I don't know why we're not in there voting on it. Seems to me I ought to be sitting in my chair in the House chamber right now and not with you. But they've said that they're going to attempt to bring it forward for a vote in the second week of September. To me, that doesn't make any sense. Every day that goes by, the governor is doing more damage to various state agencies and nonprofit groups. So,
Okay, so this, if this passes, it's going to go to the Senate. We're a 50-50 there. Obviously, unless there's some sense of sanity, it looks like it will pass there.
there are a number of Senate Democrats, Mike, who've said they will not vote for a tax hike. Hard to say what actually happens. There's also a rumor that there are 10 House Democrats that will not vote for a tax hike. So that's why I say I think it's a little premature to say that that Democrat budget is actually going to get voted on in the House or pass either chamber.
Okay, well, I know that for a fact that I had tried to obtain somebody to come and speak from the other side, and there was more or less an attitude of, we don't have anybody in the town of Wolcott that really represent us from that side, so they would rather not talk to me. I hope that will change. We'll see next week when this thing airs,
Right.
just how that goes. Okay, so now it's been approved on one side, and I'm saying it's going to be approved on the other side, Senate. Obviously, you have then boxed the governor into an area that he doesn't really want to go into. Is it your opinion that he will veto it?
I honestly don't know.
You don't?
I only know what he has said. I think it would be highly unlikely for him to veto a budget at this late stage of the game after it passes both House and Senate, even if it's only by the slim majorities that the Democrats hold on a party line vote. But anything is possible. I would put nothing past this governor. He's not running for re-election. He has made it quite clear what his intentions are. He doesn't want a tax increase. It's the one thing I finally, after all of these years, agree with the governor on. But he wants to ensure there's no tax increase by drastically punishing small towns. He's fully funding the major cities. He's fully funding Stamford, his hometown. But places like Wolcott and Southington, he would much rather see us go without and make it up, via property tax increases.
So then, in some way or other, Wolcott is going to take a hit. Wolcott is going to end up having to end up probably with an additional tax bill, one way or another, because unless the mayor is wise enough to scrape down to the bone, he's got to come up with revenue somewhere.
I've had conversations with the mayor and with members of the town council, although I haven't talked to them in quite a long time. It was long before the budget process began in the town of Wolcott, and I assured them that I was going to be as staunch an advocate for making sure that the town of Wolcott is fully funded, as I've done every year that I've been in office, even with Governor Malloy in the governor's office all of this time. This time is different. And I warned them that there is a distinct possibility that because our budget crisis is such a genuine reality, that any budget that is passed by the Democrats in Hartford is very, very likely to reduce aid to the town of Wolcott, and that they should prepare for that.
I'm going to ask you the one question I said to myself I wasn't going to ask you. Do we have the integrity in Hartford to start planning to improve our situation in the next 10 years?
It's kind of a loaded question, Mike. I can only speak for myself. I don't want to characterize any of my colleagues in either party up there as good or bad people. I think everyone has different ideas. And you know, the political parties have their own philosophies. Do I think Democrats are bad people? No. They have a different philosophy on what would make the world a better place. They believe that government has a role to fulfill in the lives of its citizens. And that is why they have no qualms about increasing the size of government and the involvement in the daily lives of citizens. And that also translates into how you spend your money. So they decide to spend it for you. Are they doing it because they're bad people? Well, I don't agree with them in any way, shape, or form, but I think they genuinely believe that they are making the world a better place. I couldn't disagree more about that philosophy. I believe in freedom, and I believe that the founders of this great country were brilliant when they put forward the notion that people should have the maximum amount of freedoms possible and the government should be as limited in their lives as possible. My experience as our state representative has been that the government is too big. It is completely unwieldy. There is not a single person you could talk to in either party or the governor or even the staff that deals with nothing but the budget who could tell you what every line item is, what that money's for, whether it's managed properly or not. That's a symptom of a government that's gone way too out of bounds in size and scope. We need to get back to those American principles on a state and a federal level, which is that the government should be limited, only do the things it absolutely must do, and transfer all of the freedoms back to the citizens who rightfully deserve them.
Okay. Rob, I want to thank you for taking the time to come sit down with us and explain what the rationale is in Hartford and kind of project a little bit where we're going to go forward.
I appreciate
your time, and I hope you and the others up there will sit down and talk some reality.
I would like that very much, Mike. I'm going to continue to do what I'm doing, which is to advocate for the town of Wolcott and all of the citizens in our state that we need to make Connecticut a place that's a desirable place to live, to run a business, and retire. And the way to do that is reducing taxes and making Connecticut an attractive place for businesses to come and grow.
Way to go.
Thank you.